Hello everybody, Andy Brown here. I am making this video because I want to introduce to you our third video in the set of Negro League panel discussions that I've been holding over the last little while. In this evening's discussion, we talked about Rapdixon, we talked about Turkey Stearnes, and we talked about Martindihigo. So what I want you to do is please watch along, see what you think. There's a lot of interesting stuff in this video talking about Rap and why he's not in the Hall of Fame and you know, the looking at his statistics and you can see that Ted's got definitely a strong opinion that he should be in the Hall of Fame and it certainly seems that way. There's also some interesting things talked about with Turkey Stearnes and Martindihigo, who is I believe he might be the first. No, he's not. He's the second Cuban player that we talk about. Hence my Industrialis top that I've got on here. Please watch it, please enjoy it, and I hope you're enjoying the process, learning a little bit more about the Negro League players, much as I am myself. I'm really enjoying it. Thanks for your support so far, and please follow along, like and subscribe, as they say, whatever that means. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. All right, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye. All right, okay, thank you very much and welcome back to, this is the third conversation about the Negro Leagues Dream Team artwork that I'm trying to paint. Luckily tonight I've got with me three experts on the Negro Leagues, and maybe we can just go around and quickly introduce yourselves, just in case people haven't seen the previous videos. Maybe start in my top left-hand corner, manning first base, we've got Ted. Tell us a bit about yourself, Ted.
Okay, my name's Ted Knorr, and I'm a Negro League buff, for want of a better word. And let me see what I wanted to say. I've been a SABR member for 40 years. My favorite achievement was founding of the Jerry Malloy Negro League Conference. And another thing I'm very proud of, and we'll hear a little bit about that tonight, I raised money to put a marker on the grave of Rapdixon, we're going to talk about. And I did see, Andy, you wanted to know where they could maybe get in touch with us or something.
Absolutely, yeah.
I do have a presence on Facebook.
Okay.
Ted Knorr. I'm a bit of a blabbermouth, so that's the best place to find me.
Sounds perfect for here. Thank you very much for being here, Ted. And Jim, over to you.
I'm Jim Overmyer. I've written some books on the Negro Leagues after discovering them about 30 years ago, particularly biographies of two Negro League owners, F.M. Manley and Cumberland Posey, but I've contributed to quite a few other publications, and like all good SABR members, I'm always helping other people out with research, things like that. I was also a member of the last special committee that elected Negro Leaguers to the Hall of Fame in 2006.
Very good. Excellent, excellent. And last but not least.
I'm Leslie Heaphy, and I'm a history professor at Kent State University at Stark. And I write on the Negro Leagues and women's baseball, and I'm the vice president of SABR, and I was also on that same committee with Jim to elect the last Negro Leaguers to the Hall of Fame in 2006.
Excellent, excellent. Okay. Well, thank you very much for being here. Tonight we're starting off discussing the last outfielder. We've got three players up for discussion. We've got Turkey Stearnes, we've got Rapdixon, which I think one or two of you might know a thing about, and we've got Martindihigo. Is that, am I okay with my pronunciation?
Pretty good.
Is that okay? So we've got our three outfielders there. So let's start with Turkey Stearnes. He was the first person up for discussion. Norman Thomas Turkey Stearnes, he was born in 1901 in Tennessee, dying in 1979 in Michigan, and his first debut was apparently for the Nashville Giants in 1920. Five-time All-Star, and he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2000. So he's a well-decorated player. What should we know about him? Why should he be included on this canvas?
Stearnes has you know, one of the nice things about the best set of historical statistics for the Negro Leagues is that they're at seamheads.com, by the way, is that the developers of the stats have normalized them for 162 game seasons, so you can sort of compare them to current major league stats. Well, Stearnes has got I don't know, maybe not the best, but one of the best annual home run records, 30 home runs a year. And on 167 RBIs, 348 batting average, and a preposterous, well, it's not preposterous, it's stupendous, 176 OPS plus. But he spent his 20s playing for the Detroit Stars, and their home field was a place called Mack Park. Mack Park, well, it was designed to fit the street pattern of the neighborhood, as so many older parks were, including places like Ebbets Field and the Polo Grounds in New York City. It ran 278 feet down the right field line and 318 feet to right center, and Turkey was a left-handed hitter. If you look at his stats, you will see that after he left Detroit, his general overall production remained very high, but his home runs dropped off. I'm not saying he wasn't a good player, but there's something in there. Of course, he also normalized to 19 triples a year, and Mack Park was 445 feet to center field. So it may be he could put the ball to the opposite field and run like hell too. So he did a lot of things. I always, when someone comes up with a really preposterous home run level, I'd like to look and see where it was they played. Well, it has something to do with it. I'm not saying he was not a deserving Hall of Famer and a good player, but we should point that out.
He certainly had speed, and that was, and Satchel called him one of the greatest players that he ever saw play. He was also I mean, when think about it, size-wise, he's a little guy, and he swung with a typically, I mean, he had a very strange batting stance, and others said they didn't understand how he could hit the way he did with a very skinny bat as well. So he had some unusual, and he was a fairly quiet and reserved off the field, but not so much on the field. So he had kind of that, he just had Hamtramck Stadium up in Detroit,
Yes.
which was just dedicated in his honor, and so just this past weekend, this past week, and so a nice new honor for Turkey Stearnes with all of his children and grandchildren there, which is kind of cool.
That stadium, Leslie, if you don't mind me interrupting, that stadium, it's still standing, isn't it? I've seen photos on it. I think, yeah.
They've been working very hard to restore that. They've gotten a lot of grants and money, and yeah, and so that was just done this past weekend. It also appears from stories and interviews with Turkey himself that he actually started out as a right-handed hitter, and injured himself when he was a youngster, burned his arm, and actually then had to sort of turn himself into a left-handed hitter. When he filled out his survey for the Baseball Hall of Fame, he actually listed himself hitting from both sides of the plate, and that's what brought up the story, because you'll notice he didn't actually do that, and that's why, because he was a natural right-handed hitter who taught himself to be a left-handed hitter.
Okay, very good, very interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and to that, I just want to add the statistics that Jim and Leslie shared are great. The batting average, I just wanted to point out, for players that batted as often as Turkey, only Judd Wilson and Oscar Charleston topped that average. And in the major leagues, during that segregated period, only Ty Cobb, Rogers Hornsby, and Joe Jackson. So Stearnes stands among the immortals of baseball. One of the reasons why he might have been a good hitter, I just read tonight, Buck O'Neill said that Turkey used to talk to his bats in hotel rooms. Hey.
That's the magic right there.
That's awesome.
There you go.
Do you think, I've seen here, I've got a thing that says Bill James rated him as the 25th greatest player or outfielder of all time, or in Negro League history, sorry. Do you feel that he's overlooked? Do you think he's one of these players that is...
No.
No,
you were right the first time. James ranks him the 25th greatest player of all time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And the second greatest outfielder in the Negro Leagues.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So James ranks him very high.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, well, we'll move on to our second outfielder, who is Rapdixon. Let me just give you a little bit about him. and then I'll hand you over. So it's Herbert Allen Rapdixon, born September the 15th, 1902, and he died in 1944. I've got him here as being born in Kingston, Georgia, and dying in Michigan. Ted, do you know anything about?
Well, first of all, I want to apologize to the three of you. Even yesterday, I was becoming a little heavy-handed on rap, but tomorrow's a new day. But given the competition that rap's up against, I just want to begin by stipulating, and we've just heard why, Turkey Stearnes is one of the three greatest Negro League outfielders of all time. My only argument against Turkey, and it's probably not a good one, is we have 6 center fielders, 3 right fielders, and no left fielders in this group of outfielders. I personally think that we should have 2 center fielders in the finals and 1 right fielder. And my other stipulation is Martindihigo as a player is maybe the best of them all. His versatility. But I hope tonight to convince you that Dixon was the better outfielder. So let's try some statistics first. May I share a screen?
Please, have a go. Let's see what happens.
Okay. Yeah, let's see what happens is right. Because I need to figure out how to do this. Okay. Share a screen. Oh, it says you've disabled screen sharing.
I was worried it was going to say that because I don't know that I've done
I can do without it.
Let me see how let me just see if I must be able to undo it easily enough. Hang on.
Okay.
Try now.
Yeah, it looks like I'll be able to do it.
There we go. All right.
Okay, now I'm ahead of myself here. Let's, Okay, so once again, we're discussing Dihigo, Stearnes, and Dixon. And you can see here, Dihigo is the 8th best Negro League player of all time, according to the Hall. So I have a lot of work to do there. Turkey Stearnes is the 17th best and 4th best outfielder. Dixon, not in the Hall, at best would be the 36th player. So let's look at some statistics here. And there's some opinions here too. And as long as I went ahead, let's use this one. I'm going to compare Dixon to Dihigo, but my main purpose in this comparison is to show Dixon as an outfielder against Dihigo as an outfielder. The previous slide, which we ran through, showed Dihigo's stellar WAR at 66, which not only is 3 times higher than Dixon's, but it's much higher than Stearnes. But that's because he's also a pitcher. Over half of his WAR is earned as a pitcher.
Okay.
So I have 11 categories to look at here, and we're not going to look at them all. Mercy on the audience trying to build up votes. But Rapdixon was a 5-tool player. He could hit, and I show you his batting average is 325. Dihigo's is 312. He could hit with power, and I point out the slugging. Dixon slugged 538, Dihigo 514. He could run. Dihigo stole 18 bases a year. Dixon, according to Seamheads, 38. Leaving the hitting side, the only place where Dihigo outdoes Dixon is Dihigo does hit slightly more homers per season than Dixon. But on the glove, that's the other part of the outfield equation. You need to hit, you need to be able to field. Dixon's fielding percentage is much higher than Dihigo's, so he could field. Dixon's arm is the highest run saved by arm in the Negro Leagues. I think that backs up the fact that he probably had the best arm of any Negro League outfielder.
Ted, if I can interrupt you 1 minute.
Sure.
Just looking at these two, your comparison here. With looking at this, why would Dixon not be in the Hall of Fame?
Well, I can tell you, at least in my opinion, the only outfielder that was dead when Dixon died remember, there's 12 outfielders either in the hall or on the ballot. The only one of those 12 already passed on was Torriente. Cool Papa Bell, who's one of Dixon's chief rivals, really, from a per season aspect. Bell dwarfs him in life, longevity, and there's no question who the better outfielder is there. It's Cool Papa Bell. But Bell also had an ally that Dixon doesn't have, and that was Satchel Paige. Mm-hmm. All the stories about the speed of light and stuff, that was stuff that Dixon didn't have an opportunity for because both Bell and Paige live on where Dixon and his chief champion, Oscar Charleston, die early. So that's my reason for why he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Very interesting.
Yeah. I do want to point out Dihigo, not only does he out-homer Dixon on an annual basis, but he covers more ground in the outfield.
Which often leads to a lower fielding percentage because you can, that sort of correlates sometimes in terms of that.
And a reason for that, Leslie, which you were probably headed to, Dihigo played more percentage in center field than Dixon. And center field is where you do get the higher range factor. But you're right. Dihigo's fielding percentage might have been higher had he not had that range, getting the balls that were really risky. One other thing I want to point out, Rapdixon is the only outfielder who has a better than average fielding percentage, range factor, and arm in all three outfield positions. So that's another thing that makes Rap's defense great. Just three quick opinions that I want to give you, and we're going to look at the first three outfielders inducted into the Hall of Fame. Monty Irvin, you can see he rates Rapdixon the 5th best. There's 7 outfielders in the Hall, so that means Irvin's saying Dixon should be there. But Bell names Dixon to his all-time outfield. So he says Dixon should be there. And Oscar Charleston, way back in 1949, gives the greatest hurrahs for Dixon. He names Dixon to his all-time team, but he puts him in center field, which to me says a lot because both Dihigo and Torriente played a higher percentage of their games in center field. The other thing Charleston's saying wasn't the kind of talk we did back then, but if you look here, he is saying Rapdixon was the greatest African-American outfielder he ever saw because Dihigo and Torriente are Afro-Cuban. Legends, is that a question, Andy?
No, I'm just, it's very interesting. Sorry, carry on, sorry.
Okay, I'm almost done. I'm only going to give you 6 legends. He has about 12. But that outfield in Harrisburg, and you can see behind me the uniforms of all 3 of the outfielders, is the greatest in the Negro Leagues according to the Hall of Fame. And I interpret that because all 3 of the outfielders in Harrisburg are part of those 12 outfielders that the Hall has either in or on the ballot. In 1927, Dixon goes to Japan, and a recently published in America book by Kaz Sayama and Bill Staples makes the case that that tour, and Dixon was the leading hitter on the tour, was just as responsible as Babe Ruth's tour 7 years later in creating professional baseball in Japan. Dixon's greatest record, he had 14 straight hits in a pair of doubleheaders in 1929. In 1930, he hit the first home run by an African-American in Yankee Stadium, which I call the house that Dixon rehabbed. In 1933, he was elected to the first East-West All-Star game by the fans. And from 25 to 35, that's an 11-season period, he was named to 9 times named an All-Star. Now that's a Composey All-Star, a Rollo Wilson All-Star, an East-West All-Star. And finally, he was the last professional manager for Leon Day. The first. And Leon himself told me in 1990, he didn't comment much about Rap as a player, but he did say he was the right man for that job, and he was forever grateful to the leadership that Dixon provided. This is a recent artistic work. Phil Dewey, Andy, I'm sure you know him.
Beautiful piece, yeah.
He did this. And then this is an old campaign button from 2006. It didn't work, but I guess I have to get a reprint for him. I have to do it by Sunday night for him to perhaps be considered for this great honor. That's all I got.
Well, thank you very much, Ted. That's absolutely marvelous. How about Jim or Leslie? Have you got anything to add to that? That was fantastic.
Well, Dixon didn't get a lot of attention in 2006, but as did some other players not get perhaps enough attention. But since then, two things have happened and one thing hasn't happened. One of the things that's happened has been the great strides in accumulating statistics and interpreting them, as Ted has shown us, on the Negro Leagues. At the time, the Negro Leagues were basically representing 10% of the United States population. Their owners, as is most Black business owners, couldn't get their hands on mainstream bank loans, the kind of capital it would take to build a ballpark. And so they scrimped on a lot of things, traveling secretaries and statisticians being one of them. There are stats from those days, but it's kind of mail in the game results and don't forget. Oh, you forgot. Well, so they're kind of sketchy. But researchers now are going through old newspaper box scores and game stores. We've got some pretty good stats. And they show us a lot about Dixon, for example, that we didn't know 15 years ago. The second thing has happened is that people like Ted have taken up the causes of some of these players and done, not just, you can go on Facebook on the Negro Leagues history site, and there'll be people campaigning for guys you never heard of to be in the Hall of Fame for some obscure reason. But there are also people doing it right. Ted is one of them. And Dixon's got an entirely different profile now than, say, he had 15 years ago. The thing that hasn't happened is the Hall of Fame hasn't had another Negro League election. In the mainstream major leagues, at one time they were the white major leagues, now they're the let's just call them the mainstream major leagues. The player makes the ballot after being retired, I think, for 5 years, if he makes the ballot. If he can get a relatively small number of a percentage of the vote, he can stay on the ballot for 10 years. And if he still doesn't make the cut, he gets dropped off. And what used to be called the Veterans Committee is now the various historical era committees can look at him again, and they can look at him again. You could be looked at for, 15 times. And you might just get in after a while. And there should have been I'm not saying maybe every year like that, but there should have been and should be subsequent voter evaluations of the Negro Leagues. Hasn't happened yet. This would have been a great year. Well, next year would be a good year for it to happen because they call it the Early Days Committee, which is everything from the invention of the baseball up through 1950, is meeting again. And it was supposed to meet in 2020. They didn't meet. They're going to meet in 2021. Maybe a good chance to get in through the regular voting mechanism, or the Hall could round up some Negro League experts, and if I may use the term, and go after the Black players again. It ought to, one way or the other, it ought to happen. Hasn't, it's been too long, needs to happen.
I've got nothing to add. They pretty much covered it.
Yeah, very comprehensive. But you'd say he should be there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the biggest thing that I would agree with Jim is what we know about rap today is not what we knew in 2006.
Right.
And that makes it's the same. I mean, John Donaldson is another example of somebody that we know a great deal more about now than we did in 2006. And so
And you know more about these players now. Is that just because the research is going deeper? It's going into the news articles. It's going into those sorts of things.
It's the systematic pulling together of box scores and creating the statistics. Because initially it was just pulling together the stories and the rosters, and then it began to delve deeper into, and it's been very systematic, and filling in gaps because we know what games we're looking for and what seasons and things like that, and so you can pinpoint what's missing, and I think that's been the key.
And has it made a big change to player statistics? Have you found that there was players that the statistics have come up a lot or gone down a lot, or it has? Yeah.
Some cases, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Very interesting.
I think the best are. I mean, you can rank them a little differently as people are, as you are setting up, but the best are still pretty much the best. What this has really done, not germane to what we're doing, but you ask, is really highlighted the next tier of players, guys who played for 10 or 15 years. They're not in the Hall of Fame. They might have made some all-star teams, but they were always there, and they were good. They were not great. They were good. They just got completely forgotten about now. Now they're in there too. Now it's a fuller picture because every team's got some stars. Every team's got some guys who get cut in June because they can't deliver. But the majority of the players on every team are the guys who go out there every day and do pretty well or better than pretty well. That's what really supports the team. Now we can figure out who knows. Now Negro League teams are complete. They're not the Josh Gibsons and Rapdixons, Satchel Pages, just. They're all that next tier of players who make teams what they are.
Perfect. Very
And
good.
if I could reiterate what Jim just said, the Ted Williams and the Babe Ruth and the Ty Cobb of the Negro Leagues are in. We're looking for the Goose Goslings and the Kiki Kylers and players like that.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Very good. Okay. Let's move on to our last suggested outfielder. That was Martin Dihigo. And I've got here a Cuban professional baseball player born in Matanzas, Cuba, which is where the Crocodilos play. And he died also in Cuba in 1971. From the research I've done, it seems like an incredible player, very hard to even give a position to.
That's right.
What would you say about him?
For me, that's the big key with Dihigo is his versatility. I mean, and versatility in the sense of not a typical utility player kind of versatility, but versatility at a very high level, in terms of thinking about the positions he could play. At some point in his career, he played all 9 of them, to varying degrees. And so, I mean, what player can do that? And the nicknames that he earned, El Inmortal and El Maestro. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that in terms of the way people saw him, the accolades that he has. He's in at least 5 different halls of fame. Yeah. In different countries, and so I mean that alone tells you what we're looking at here.
I saw that. That's the U.S. Hall of Fame, Cuban, Mexican, Dominican Republic, and the Venezuelan. I mean, that speaks for itself, doesn't it? Incredible. Incredible.
And I mean, he had great range. He could hit for power. He had some speed. I mean, he had all the tools that you would expect to look for. And we're thankful to Alex Pompez for bringing him into the country and getting him into the Negro Leagues, because that's how he came.
Dihigo may have been actually the best player to ever play in the Negro Leagues, which doesn't make him the best Negro Leaguer because, as Leslie pointed out, if you're in 4 other halls of fame, you must have spent a good amount of time playing in other countries. But he was amazing. I mean, he played all the positions. He's shown in the seam head status actually having caught 1 Negro League game.
Yeah.
And pitched a lot. Not unsuccessfully, but not incredibly. He had a great record. He ended his career in the Mexican League. He was like a 19-20 game winner, but never achieved that in the Negro Leagues, possibly because he was wanted somewhere else. He just played everywhere. He was just amazingly versatile. He was always good and always in demand, obviously. So much in demand that he kind of gravitates to the bottom of the Negro League list. It's also very difficult. Where are you going to put him? Well, you've got him as an outfielder. That's good. I mean, I'm not objecting to that, but he could have been as a shortstop or a second baseman. He could have been anywhere. Which kind of, there's something called the curse of versatility. If you're too versatile, you wind up being planted all over the field and you don't make a rep at a particular position, which may be Dihigo's thing. Plus, you don't make a rep in a particular country.
I just want to add one thing, because obviously I agree with everything we've said about Dihigo, with one point. I happen to be a supporter of Bullet Joe Rogan as the most versatile. Dihigo's earned run average plus puts him 10th in Negro League history. So that's very good, but Rogan is 8th. And in terms of an OPS plus on the other side of the coin, Dihigo's 23rd, with more than 2,000 plate appearances, I should say. Well, Rogan's 12th. And Dihigo, he was
But
the first
Dihigo
one.
played more positions than Rogan did.
Well, yes and no. They both played all
Across the
9,
board.
although Rogan's catching was, as you know, in the Philippines. But, Jim's right. Dihigo does play 1 or 2 games in the Negro Leagues behind the plate. And I don't know if Rogan does. I don't
believe
does.
so.
Yeah, but 1 or 2 games versus, as you know, Rogan was Oscar Charleston's catcher in the Philippines, Charleston being a pitcher. Yep. So I think Rogan is just as versatile as Dihigo. That's just my opinion. We won't argue about that too much because I'm all worn out from rap.
Plus, Rogan was an umpire. That's something that Dihigo can't claim.
There you go. That's a good point. Although I wonder if he was in Cuba. I wonder if that's fair.
He may have been. He may have been.
I know. But I'm just.
For me, with Dihigo, it's not only what he did in the Negro Leagues, but I think Jim's point, the fact that he's there's no other, in 5 Halls of Fame tells you what he was doing. And so I think to compare Rogan and Dihigo is a little difficult because of exactly that, because he did play so many other places and he moved around so much that I think to me, you don't get elected to 5 different countries' Halls of Fame unless you are incredibly versatile and you're able to at every place you go. And so, and we're arguing a little bit of this sort of category, but it's kind of fun. But I would put Dihigo for me at the top.
I'm not an arguer. Jim made one point as a Negro leaguer.
Right.
I think it's Rogan. The statistics, although the Hall of Fame does agree with you, Leslie, Dihigo is the 8th man in, Rogan's the 17th man in.
Well, that was the process changed over the decades. There was 9 guys in 7 years, and then it dribbled and dribbled and dribbled and dribbled, and then we came on the scene and there were 17 more. So I don't know about that ranking process.
All right. Okay. Well, look, I think we've covered the outfield very, very nicely there with that discussion. So thank you very much, all 3 of you, for being part of this tonight. And we'll be back very soon to discuss the shortstop position. Thank you.
So that brings us to the end of discussion number 3 about Turkey Stearnes, Rapdixon and Martin Dihigo. What I'd like you to do now is go to my Twitter page, which is @AndyB as an artist, and you should find a poll with those 3 gentlemen's names on, and then you just click on whichever one you want to see on the Dream Team canvas behind me. Thanks very much for watching. Take care wherever you are. Cheers.